All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's the top of the hour, so I think we should probably get started. My name is Karen Bootsma. I'm Vice President of Marketing at RiceSmart and wanted to thank you for joining us today. Took a look at the registration. We had a good crowd from all across the country, some as far as South America, so thanks for joining. Our Smart Talk webinar series is focused on bringing thought leadership and expert perspectives around timely human capital management topics. And today, we're extremely fortunate to be joined by the principal analyst and co-founder of Key Interval Research, William Tincup. You probably follow William and already know him. He's one of the leading thinkers on the intersection of HR and technology. And today he will share his insights on a very interesting and definitely original topic, from love at first sight to amicable divorce, 3 ways to build brand advocates even after layoff. As you know, candidate experience is crucial to hiring, but why stop once they become your employees? In today's market, your brand reputation can really break or make your talent acquisition, which means it's imperative to keep employees positively engaged with your company even after a layoff. So undoubtedly, this is going to be a very interesting conversation. Tell you a little bit about what we do. We are the nation's fastest growing career transition provider with customers in over 40 industries. We offer outplacement and redeployment and have been very successful because our solutions offer the perfect blend of revolutionary technology and expert career services. In fact, our results really speak for themselves. Our outplacement services land employees 5 months faster than the national average, with landing rates exceeding 80%, and those who land typically have land a job with 70% or greater pay. So if you have a chance, check us out at www.ricesmart.com. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce today's speaker, William Tincup. As I mentioned, William is the co-founder and principal analyst at Key Interval Research. In addition to being one of the key influencers and thought leaders, William has been blogging about HR-related issues since 2007, so definitely a vanguard in this field. He's a contributor to many HR forums, including Fistful of Talent, Human Capital Institute, Human Capitalist, HR Europe, LinkedIn Talent Blog, and many more. And he also co-hosts a daily HR podcast called Drive Through HR. William serves on the board of advisor of over a dozen companies, including Recruit Wi-Fi, Good.com, Rollpoint, CostPoint, anyway, numerous companies, and he's also on the board of director of Checked and TDN2K. He's a graduate of University of Alabama, Birmingham. Sorry about that, William, with a BA in art history, and he's earned a master's from University of Arizona and an MBA from Case Western Reserve. So it's my great pleasure to now turn over the webinar to William.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. I'm fascinated by this topic. I think you've kind of hit it on the head at the beginning, that we're at the beginning of a conversation around employer brand, and we're emphasizing the dialogue that's happening right now is mostly on the talent acquisition side. It's how do you get out in front of that? How do you manage it? But we're not really thinking about it having a ripple effect all the way through the organization. And I'm fascinated by it, and we are, we're going to, hit the tip of the iceberg today, but it's the start of what I hope to be years of conversation about how this goes much deeper than we ever really thought about it. To know a couple things about me outside, you never really like hearing your introduction because it just sounds so boastful. but anyhow, if you want to know about me, go to LinkedIn. Look at LinkedIn. It's got a fair enough representation of who I am and what I've done. But at the core of this is I'm an HR supporter. I've fell in love with HR, 15 years ago, because HR pros at their core, at their center, are hopeful. And I had been dealing up till that point with marketers who are jaded and cynical. Just kidding. So I just fell in love with HR. I've spoken at a lot of HR conferences. My network is predominantly HR people, and so think of me as someone that's just a supporter and that has fallen in love with HR, and I'm constantly learning, and I love that. Key Interval Research, the bit on Key Interval, it's John Sumser and I. There's a 2-man shop. It's a research shop. We we founded it at HR Tech last October. So it's about 8 months old. And so it's a new business, and it's a research firm, not too unlike Gartner or Aberdeen or IDC or folks like that, in that we're trying to research the intersection of HR and technology. And why we started a research firm is because we didn't like the narrative of HR. What's talked about in HR is predominantly negative. And so we just didn't like that. We knew that there were innovative hero stories that were going on in HR, but we needed to go research it and find those things out. And so that's why we founded the research firm, and we're doing research, and it's all written for HR practitioners. So it's studying HR practitioners and then reporting back, kind of like Lewis and Clark, reporting back what we found back to practitioners. It's not parental, because I think that, again, that's more negative than not, telling HR in a way that they don't know things or that they're somehow lacking or whatever. We just don't want to be that type of firm. So if you want to know more about Key Interval, Google keyinterval.com. And the reason I wanted to start with some contact information for John and I, John's been blogging about this space for 20-something years, mostly on the recruiting side. You might know his multi-contributor blog is hrexaminer.com. And these are the ways to reach out to us. You want to tweet to me and you want to take a conversation offline, you have a question, think of me as an advocate. Think of me as something that's a resource that I want to help you as you kind of go along in your career. So enough about that. I think at the core of Key Interval is we started with some questions. So I think it's important to understand, A, how people make money, and B, what they're all about. John and I are curious. We'll just cut to the chase. We are curious animals, and we have more questions than we have answers. But we start there by asking, we question everything, the status quo, what we think is true. Somebody would say, you don't have a full-time HR professional before you have 100 employees. That sounds like it's true. Sounds like something you'd hear at a SHRM conference. Or 80% of the value of a firm comes from 20% of the workforce. That kind of sounds true. I mean, that's something I'd hear, definitely. Hell, that's something I'd say at an HR conference. But yet, we don't really know if those things are true. And so John and I, at its base, we question that. And so with those questions, then we go out and we do qualitative. So we do interviews and focus groups, and we talk to people. Shocking. We talk to people doing the job. Hey, what are you doing? What do you think about this? So qualitative research, we also do massive amount of quantitative research and surveys. That data comes back to us, and we discover things. And every time we do research, we discover how wrong we were. It's like getting kicked in the stomach every day. You thought the world was flat. Oh, no, it's round. So every day we go out and we discover new things, which that feeds more curiosity. All that does is turn right around and go, well, wait a minute. If vendors hate RFPs and HR generally hates RFPs, well, why are RFPs, why are they there? Shocking. So it fuels more of our curiosities, and so that's our bit. That's our firm, and we'll grow, and we'll add people and add research and do all that bit. But that, just so you understand where I'm coming from, I think it's important to always kind of know when you hear somebody speak, what's their take, where are they coming from, etc. So I'm going to take you through some stories, and some fun stories, actually. But I want to kind of get to what is a network, what does it look like, and how can we think about it a little bit differently? What's the candidate experience? There's a popular view. Thank God there's a popular view of what the candidate experience is and should be and isn't, et cetera. There's this idea of culture marketing, whereas we as companies put forth, who we are culturally. What are our values? What do we stand for? What's the day in life? What is all that bit? The two other stories I want to talk about is advocacy. Like, what is advocacy? What is employee advocacy? How do we unlock, should we unlock, again, questioning everything, should we unlock advocacy? Okay, if we should, let's get there. Then how do we do it? How do you get to the point where you can actually get people to be advocates for your brand? And then the last thing is, what is your brand? What is at its essence. What is your brand? So we'll start with the network. When I applied to business school, oh God, this is forever ago, so I won't date myself too much. The commonly held belief at that time was to apply to 10 schools. Okay, you apply to 2 schools that you could just drive by on a Tuesday, apply, and start school on Wednesday. You know, just 2 of those you could get into. You applied to 6 schools that you had about a 50 to 70% chance of getting into. And then you applied to 2 schools that you had absolutely no chance of getting into. Lottery ticket. So I had that mix, and my 2 on the other end of the bell curve were Harvard and Dartmouth, and I got as far as the interview stage was Dartmouth, but Harvard, you know, they never answered my call, and that's okay. I've forgiven them and moved on. But for a moment, I want you to think about your company like a school. And then just, if you can, close your eyes and just think, okay, you're the University of Texas. You're in Austin. You know, there's 55,000 students that are there. It's both cool and conservative. What does the school look like? And why do people go to school? Not just to get degrees and all that other stuff. And why I want you to do this is when I went through my MBA, I discovered that all the curricula is the same. The books that you read at Wharton are the same books that you read at Stanford, are the same books that you read at Case, are the same books the books that you read at the University of Georgia. They're the same books. The case study method, how in which we are taught, is all the same. Having all the tests on the same day, the pressure cooker atmosphere, and team development, and understanding diversity, all that stuff is at every school. There's no difference. Sorry, but there is no difference. The difference is the network. You know, there are subtle differences along the way. Yeah, teachers are a little bit different. The pedigree of the professors at Harvard are different. I mean, we'll just kind of say that for the record. They are different. Their pedigrees are different than the teachers at the University of Texas at Arlington. That's just true. Okay, fair enough. But students, your peer group, are a little bit different. They're going to have either better pedigrees, come from different types of families, or they're going to have better experience, et cetera. And again, if you use the Harvard versus University of Texas at Arlington, affectionately known as UTA, then you're going to kind of get to that. Yeah, there's different students. Yeah, there's different teams. But you learn-ish the same stuff, okay? The people around you can be different. The teachers can be different. You're learning the same stuff, but it's the former students and that network effect. If I had a Harvard MBA, if I had earned a Harvard MBA, that network of everyone that went through Harvard's MBA, I think the oldest MBA in America, is massive. The doors that it opens, okay, the absolute doors that it opens, like you don't have to even talk about what you have in common. You went in 68, I went in 92. We already have that in common. To get back to your company for a second, you're at Hewlett-Packard. Okay, you worked there in the early 70s. I worked there in the late 90s. We already have that in common. We're both former HP employees. And so I want to kind of get you mentally over to a place where you think about your company and you think about it like a school and you think of your alumni network. What is that? Why do we care? And I'm going to unpack why we care in several different ways. But I think I want you to kind of emotionally be over to a place where you think about alumni. And, you know, here's going to be something that really the question du jour is, what do your former students say about you? And a better phrase of that is, when you're not around, what do your former employees say about you? Okay? And so that element, that's not what we're talking about in employer brand right now. What we're talking about is how do you manage your LinkedIn profile, and, you know, and how do you get, you know, the marketing of candidates to come back to a career site and find out a little bit about your benefits and things like that. And, you know, and all that stuff's important. Those are all spokes. I'm going to add another spoke. and this is the spoke of what, when candidates talk to your former employees, what do they say? You can't control it. You know, on some level, you actually can control it and manage it, but we'll deal with that later. But what do they say with you not in the room or not present? When they hit somebody up on LinkedIn that's a former employee, what do they say? So that's the network. That's the story about the network. We won't belabor the point, but you kind of get the bit. So candies. You know, first of all, I'm on the Candy Council, and I absolutely love Jerry Crispin and Elaine Orler and Ed Newman, the people that kind of helped put together the Candidate Experience Awards. Love them as people. Love the idea that we're actually talking about the treatment of candidates. You know, for a long time, we all know our hands are all bloody here, that we just didn't treat candidates that well. We weren't that humane. You applied, we didn't respond. That was kind of, you know, what we did. Okay, we wake up years later and, yeah, we kind of recognize maybe that wasn't the best way to go about it. Maybe we should give feedback. Maybe we should respond to candidates. Maybe we should cultivate a longer-term relationship. And so the populist view of candidate experience is currently at a place where we, as companies, we're thinking about the procession of a candidate. What do we want them to experience? What do we want them to feel? What emotions do we want to unlock? And how do we want to treat them? So when they come in for a formal interview, what does that look like? Do we pick them up from the airport? Do we Uber? Do we put roses in their room? What is the treatment? And if it's a video interview, how do we get the group to ask questions and represent our culture over the video interview? We're thinking more about that stuff now than we did just 2 years ago. So the idea that the conversation is moving is a good one. It's one that I absolutely support. If not done, no one would tell you that the candidate experience is a finished product. It is an ongoing experience. And what I learned as a marketer is still true to today, is the moment you learn your customer, the moment you really get your customer, is the moment that they change. In fact, that's the moment you know that they've changed, is when you figure it out. Like, I know what the customer really wants, is the moment that they change. And why that's important for our discussion is because from a company perspective, we're thinking about procession. We're thinking of treatment, but we're really just doing that on the front end, the romance phase of our relationship. You only have two relationships, essentially, with humans from a company perspective, the candidates and employees. And then after that, they're either former employees, you can look at the boomerang, but then they become candidates again. But we're really emphasizing and thinking about how do we treat people as candidates, and what does that look like? And dialogue is there. There's great bloggers. There's great articles. There's phenomenal the thought leadership that's out there about the procession and treatment and what we should and shouldn't do, et cetera. Promoting your values, the culture, the day in the life, and internal mobility. This is all kind of a game of, we want to relentlessly pursue the idea of fit and value. It's a game. We're playing a game, candidates are playing a game, and we want the game. We want everyone to win. We want you to fit, and you want to fit, and we want to get to value fast and then get you on internally to creating more value, et cetera. So it's the reason we talk about our values, the reason we talk about our culture, the reason we do all that stuff, the reason we're thinking about procession on the front end of that relationship is because we want to get to fit. And today, what we'll be kind of thinking about is, how do we actually do that both with employees internally? How do we do that with people that we've, already romanced into becoming employees? And then also, when we part, it's not a question of if, when we part, both voluntary and involuntary, what's that treatment look like? What's that procession look like? What do we want them to feel? How do we interact with them, and how do we manage our brand with those folks? So I want to mention the candidate for a moment from the perspective of they don't behave like you think they do, generally speaking. Because they're looking at fit from a much different perspective. They want to know everything about you. I kind of like recruiters. Recruiters kind of play this game too. If you're a good recruiter, you kind of play this game where you want to know everything about a candidate. There's within the law and outside the law, and I'm not advocating anything outside the law, but let's just say most recruiters operate outside the law, at least socially. So they want to know about candidates. They want to know, the things that you've done, not just your accomplishments and the things that you're proud of, but, also where some of the warts are. They want to know that about you. Great. That's the recruiter's company's perspective. But as candidates, they want to know that about you. They want to know your warts. They want to know all the things. Okay, you went through layoffs in 2009. What was that like? We want to know about that as candidates, so we stalk. That's what we do as candidates. And stalking kind of sounds like a bad term, and it is if you're thinking about it from a celebrity perspective. But this is the way I think all candidates today, regardless of age or all the other stuff that divides us, I think all candidates stalk. They want to know more. And so what does that look like? We're going to kind of get into that. But that last bullet point is extremely important. They'll stop at nothing to find out about you. And by the way, they're not bound by laws. They can, well, not the human resources laws or the employment laws, I should say. So they're going to find everything about you. You may as well be honest. You may as well, so with the 2015 candidate, you may as well tell the truth. And this idea of telling the truth scares the hell out of everybody, because we all have warts. We all have baggage. We've all done something wrong. We're all sinners, if you're going to go down that path. We've all done that. All of us, every company. There's no company that's perfect. There's no department that's perfect. There's no manager that's perfect. That just doesn't exist. And we're terrified that they're going to find out about that. And so what I'm kind of saying, hopefully conveying, is that isn't the future. 20 years from now and flying cars and all that stuff. That's actually today. That's how people, they're going out and trying to find out everything about you. You're doing that about them on the recruiting side, and that's a good thing. The more dialogue that we have that's based in trust and truth and authenticity, the better. And it means that we're going to have more adult conversations and less gotcha moments when we tell people, for instance, when we tell people that, listen, we work 150 hours a week. We're type A personalities. We drink a lot of coffee. We play really hard. We're all workaholics. We're all divorced. And, that's kind of it. That's our firm. Now, that's in a nutshell. I'm just being honest with you. That's who we are. You don't like that? Okay, cool. Don't apply. But if you do like that, we're not going to talk about work-life balance, because that's a lie in that particular example. We're not going to sell you on some dream, that this illusion that you fall in love with, and then all of a sudden to find out that's not really how that company behaves and operates. We need to narrow the gap. Is kind of this idea of candidate experiences, narrow that gap. The idea of cultural transparency is again, not a future concept. It's a now concept. And the more we are honest with people, to the point of telling people, here's everything we've done wrong. Here's everything we've failed at. Yeah. If you want to go work for a company that's never failed, good luck. Godspeed, little minnow. Go find that. It doesn't exist. So narrowing the gap is kind of the game in candidate experience, but I think it's going to be a game that we play throughout the relationship with both candidates, employees, and former employees. So I think it's much deeper, much richer than just what we're talking about in talent acquisition around candidate experience. So I'm kind of excited about the future where we talk about candidate experience. Oh boy, Facebook, LinkedIn, and on the next page is Glassdoor. So, the way that we want the world to operate is we manage, carefully control the message. We put a portrayal of ourselves on our Facebook page. We're going to tell you a story. We're going to offer up the jobs and talk about career opportunities. And we're going to put basically our best foot forward. right? That's what we all do. We all do the same thing. You can go to any company in LinkedIn. It's the same stuff. We're going to put the absolute best picture of ourselves. Like very few people Instagram selfies where they're not wearing makeup or where they don't look good. You know, by definition, a selfie is something that it usually puts you in a positive light, even if you don't like selfies. You know, it's not like, oh, this is a terrible picture I took of myself. Yeah, go and look at that and share it with all your friends. So we do that as companies. We do that in multiple forms and multiple ways. And so Facebook, what they're going to do is when you use that as a company, you're going to use that as an outlet to tell a story, position your jobs. I think the future of Facebook, the future of LinkedIn, the future of Glassdoor are somewhat linked together in some ways, and that it's going to become more of a game of being honest and bringing forth former employees, bringing forth current employees, bringing forth everything that makes you truly unique, and talking about where you've thrived and where you've done really, really compelling, wonderful things, and where you've missed it. And I think that's a part of our story. So it's not the selfies of the future, if you will, are more of a true or accurate portrayal of who you are, rather than an illusion of the perfect person that you want to put in front of somebody. So I think when we look at these mediums, we look at them in much the same way. And candidates look at that as an entry point on finding out the negative things about you, because it's easy to consume the positive things about your company. That's quite easy. But if they want to consume anything that's negative, they want to know, again, their pursuit is a different pursuit. They're trying to find out all your warts. They want to know all of that stuff, and they're going to stop at nothing to get to it. So the Facebook and LinkedIn is, I think LinkedIn is a little bit different than Facebook because it's more tethered to your company. So former employees are actually really easy to reach out to. Shocking. So if I'm looking at a VP of marketing position at company X, I'm going to go into LinkedIn and look at every former employee at company X, and I'm going to send them an email. That's what I'm going to do. That's what's done every single day. I'm going to go talk to them and find out, hey, why'd you leave? What do you think about them? Would you go back? I'm going to ask you generic questions to find out, are they the people that they say they are? And so I'm going to use those mediums in that way, that I want to know the truth. I want to know that before I start working with somebody, and again, it's almost like the idea of if everyone walked around with T-shirts that really explicitly told you all of their baggage, the world would be a much better place. You could just walk up to somebody and say, oh, okay, you're a bit of a psychopath and you curse a lot and you're an atheist. Okay, yeah, got it. That's the bit. And that's what they're doing, and they're going to do that more like that. We're at the beginning stages of cultural transparency and the idea that your candidates are going to talk to your former employees. We're at the beginning stages of that. That goes further, and it gets both deeper and darker, depending. So, I'll say that candidates usurp this process that you might have in your mind about how they apply, what they care about, et cetera. They're going to usurp all that, and they do usurp that, and they go directly to your formers. They go to your currents too, but, no one's really, if they have a current job with their company, it's not like they're going to talk poorly about it, and I think people know that. It's like offering up references. Why would you ever offer up references of people that wouldn't be good references? Like, duh. So they are usurping. And again, that's in their best interest. And in the future, it'll be in your best interest. So, while I'm portraying this as a little bit darker, as we start more and more the dialogue of treatment throughout the entire process, and what do we understand about that procession all the way through, not just from candidate to employee, but employee internal, and then internal to former employee to boomerang to candidate again. Once we start really thinking about that and really putting a lot of intellect around that, we're going to discover all kinds of cool stuff. And you will, on the You will be able to manage this. You will be able to get in front of it, and you won't mind at all if candidates talk to former employees. In fact, you'll probably offer them up. Imagine a world where you say, yeah, hey, join our network. You have to join as a candidate, and so you can talk to any of our former employees, and yeah, Godspeed. Imagine that world and how cool that would be. So Glassdoor, I wanted to put this on a different page because it's a different animal. And, you know, I'm a huge, you know, Glassdoor supporter and advocate. Rating sites in general, you have a love affair with rating sites. Yelp, Angie's List, you know, pick a rating site, and you want to know more about the thing, but a lot of what's reported is negative, and so you have to trust it, but you have to also kind of think critically about where these reviews are coming from, etc. Glassdoor is an element of your employer brand, and I won't say it anymore, but then just to be very specific, it is a spoke. If you're not actively in Glassdoor managing your brand, right now, your reputation, your company reputation, stop being on this call and go do that. Seriously. That's the first step. You know, it's like alcoholics talk about the first step is, you know, getting out of the stage of denial. So this is the first step. You've got to go do that. Be a part of the discussion. And, yeah, things that do get said you might not like. But being a part of that narrative is not a nice to have. That's a need to have. Because the first place that candidates go when they look at your company, they go to your company and they'll tool around and look at all your management team and all that stuff. And then they're going to go to Google and they're going to put the company name in. And one of the first things that's there is Glassdoor. And they're going to click on it and they're going to read all the reviews. They're going to look at your CEO's approval. They're going to look at all that stuff. And they're going to weigh that as they decide, should I apply to this job? You know, and again, get back to that idea of everyone wearing T-shirts with all their baggage on them. Well, if I walked up to somebody and it said psychopath, cursing, atheist, I'm probably not going to engage in a lot of heavy discussion, albeit we have cursing in common, but we don't have the others. I'm going to kind of move on. That's how candidates view your company. You think of the positions that you're putting forth as gold and wonderful and awesome. And, you know, in years where it's a recession, you know, when there's scarcity, if you're Economics 101 fan, scarcity and surplus, we are in a time right now where it is scarcity, and candidates have more power. If we don't recognize that, we're kind of foolish. So being able to understand that isn't gold that you're putting in front of them, that's an opportunity, and they want to go and carefully weigh that opportunity against the other opportunities that they have, because every candidate that applies to your job, they all have opportunities. Like, I fundamentally don't believe that there's active and passive candidates. There's this illusion that there's a difference. Everyone's an active candidate. Everyone. Everyone's an active candidate. Everyone that you talk to would like something better. Now, better is defined by the individual. More opportunities, cooler projects, travel abroad, more money, you know, blah, blah, blah. But everyone, there isn't a person that's not on this call or within earshot that doesn't want a better opportunity, period. We're all active. So everyone's got multiple opportunities. When they go to Glassdoor, they're weighing all of that. And if you're not a part of the dialogue, well, there's a lot of risk there. I mean, again, you don't have to do anything. I would hope that at one point you choose to be a part of that narrative. I think getting to a point where you're comfortable, where you're aggressively managing your reputation, your company's reputation, and where you're pursuing this unique and authentic you. Like, what does it truly make you unique? What's your company? What is its secret sauce and uniqueness? And this relentless pursuit of becoming authentic. Like, I don't believe anyone's completely 100% authentic, you know, and I think a lot of people think I'm really authentic, which is, you know, funny that I would have this take, but I don't think anyone's 100% authentic, because you couldn't handle 100% authentic all the time. Like, really, I mean, I filter ideas that most people think are inflammatory. So if I were to actually take off the governor, yeah, I think I'd burn a lot of bridges and say a lot of offensive things. So this idea that there's, you get to the place and you're 100% authentic, yeah, not so much. You should probably think more about that and think of it as a pursuit. It's a process. It's a pathway to an ultimate goal that you'll never get to, but you're on the pathway, which is recognition that you need to be on the pathway of authenticity. Because in an era of cultural transparency, you have no choice because your candidates are going to find out about you anyhow. So you may as well come to that and get in front of it and help manage it. So, I just want to emphasize as best I can, Glassdoor, it's not just a part, like it's a spoke. I think I've probably positioned that in your mind in probably the wrong way. It's a big part of your employer brand. And getting over there and owning it and telling your side of every story and being, when someone says something negative, get in there and own that. Getting to the place where you own everything, your flaws, your frailties, the mistakes, the failures, the good stuff too, the good stuff, the great stuff. Your CEO's 96% approval rating. You know what? That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. Like, we should talk to employees about that. We should talk to candidates about that. We should talk to everyone about that. Like, you know what? We actually do care. We want our CEO. We want our leadership to be seen as someone you can trust and like. You're both compelling and likable. Like, we want that. We all desire that. So we'll get off the Glassdoor train for just a second, and we'll move the story over to advocacy. So, I'm a bit jaded, just to kind of tell you where I'm coming from. I don't think you should fake authenticity, and nor do I believe that you actually can do it. Because I think at one point, it's like the web of lies. Everyone's told a lie, right? Well, if you've ever told a complex lie, like the game of lying is very simple. And most people screw this up. But the game of lying is to make it singular. You tell one lie and you stick to it. And you never make it complex. Like, I took off work because, I was sick and I was tired and my wife needed this other thing and I had to pick up a package, whatever. Like, you don't have to go through all that rigmarole. The game of lying is just make it singular. You know what? I was tired. That's why I didn't come into work today. Next. Then maybe I went to the museum. Maybe I didn't. Anywho, that's a singular lie. Authenticity is like that. It's a web. And so the more inauthentic, not a word, that you are, the more people are apt to find that. And so, again, we live in this world. Everyone's got a smartphone. Everyone's got a computer. Everyone's looking at Google. Everyone's looking at these things, and they're just going to find it. So you may as well get to that place where you're like, okay, I get it. We need to be more authentic. And how do we push that internally? What do we do to actually emotionally, both our leadership, the board, middle tier, front line, how do we actually move people over and, like, be who you are? It's okay. We're going to meet you, the customer, where you are, and here's who we are. And hopefully you'll fall in love with us. I think where you start with advocacy, with employee advocacy, and I question everything. Should you have employees as advocates? I would start there. If y'all have already moved over to a place where you believe that you should have advocates, okay, all right. Well, here's the deal. These are the true believers. And you can't fake that. There's no lever, the secret button that then makes Molly love your company enough to then go lay her reputation, life on the line for you. You can't fake that. They have to want it, which means that I think the underpinnings of that, they've bought into your values. They see that you live your values, you say what they are, you do it, it's everywhere. It's the front receptionist, it's the customer service people, it's support, it's their leadership, it's everybody. We say these are our values, and guys, guess what? Shocking, we live them. How did it happen? They've bought into your culture, whatever that culture is. And again, I think so this Zappos effect that everyone thinks that they have to have this singular culture. First of all, it's cultures plural, not culture. So you have lots of cultures. You have the culture of sales. You have a culture in product. You have cultures all around. You have an office in New York City. That is a different culture. But if you bring all those up to an umbrella of what is your culture, and you're trying to create advocacy, the person that you want as an advocate has to believe in your culture. I mean, like to the point of would you get a tattoo with the company's logo? I had a buddy of mine, Michael Long, he was the employer brand specialist at Rackspace, and he got the Rackspace logo tattooed on his arm because he believed in him so much. He's committed. And so, you know, can you imagine a world where you would do that? I think there's an element there of, I put a couple words, but I think you'll understand what I mean when I say they've got to believe in where you're going. Some people say that's vision, but I think, you know, vision, good God, you think of all the things that we get wrong. The idea that they can read your mind on where you're going and why you're going there, but they have to have the belief. They have to have the hope, love, trust, faith, belief in where you're going, whatever that trajectory is, whatever the moment is. Workday has this. It's a great example inside of our space. Fantastic company, been around forever, since 2007. Dave Duffield, one of the founders, ex-PeopleSoft founder. Just great leadership, fantastic brand, great technology, and when people join Workday, employees, they believe in the company. They believe that they've joined a winning company. And define winning any way you want. It could be market share, it could be profitability, it could be earnings, whatever. Giving back to the community, I don't care. But they believe in that they're winning as a part of joining that team. How do you create that? And again, you can't fake it. You can't go out to Molly and say, hey, don't you believe in where we're going? She either does or doesn't. And if she doesn't, she's not going to be your brand advocate. And if she is, it's going to be completely inauthentic. And, oh, by the way, it'll get found out. So it gets worse. So they've got to believe that they've joined a winning team. And the last one I'd like to put forth is leadership. And leadership can be, you know, it's not the gals and guys at the top of the pyramid. I mean, that's easy. That's table pickings. That's easy. It's leadership in every form. It's when you're in a small group of people, of your peers, that someone emerges as a leader and everyone believes in that person. And that gets down to ethics and morality and values and culture and a bunch of really tough stuff. But they have to have that belief. Advocacy, if you want to really unlock advocacy, they have to have that belief. They have to have the understanding that you live your brand every single day in every way. Every moment you live your values. I think getting back to True Romance, the movie True Romance, there's a part in that movie where the character's talking into the mirror. And he's deciding whether or not he's going to kill this drug dealer. And he's trying to figure it out. He's wrestling with this, do I, don't I? And all of a sudden Elvis appears. Val Kilmer is playing Elvis. Elvis appears and says, oh, getting away with it, that's the easy part. It's living with yourself afterward. That's the hard part. I think advocacy is easy to activate. Like if we're just talking about how do we activate, that's tactics. It's easy. But underneath that, these things that I've mentioned and others that you probably are bumbling around in your head right now, that's the hard part. Living your values every single day, having a culture that people actually believe in, yeah, guess what? News at 11, that's not easy. And so I don't think it's about a game of advocacy, of activation, because I actually think that is the easy stuff. So we'll move on to your brand. We got about 2 or 3 slides left before we get to Q&A, and I really would like some questions, okay? And even if we take it offline, email or Twitter or whatever, I'd really really, we're at the beginning stages of this conversation. I don't believe I have all the answers. I'm not one of those egomaniacs. I think we're just now starting to nibble at the edges of this. And when you look at this slide, what I want you to see, other than our wonderful key interval template, is that you own it. You just own it. What former employees say about you, own it. Just own it. Find out what it is, discover it, and own it, because it is what it is. But acting like it isn't there, plausible deniability, yeah, that's not going to work. In a world where we're not connected, in the pre-internet world, yeah, that might have worked. It wasn't really the moral or ethical thing to do, but yeah, you can get away with it. You can't get away with it now, and you shouldn't. You got to own it. What your current employees say about you, this isn't the old-fashioned satisfaction survey. These are pulse surveys. What are you saying about us right now? How are you doing? Are we living our values? Do you believe in our culture? Do you think you're with a winning firm? Do you think our leadership is compelling? We should know that. We should have a finger on the pulse of current employees, like just always monitoring where they're at. How you doing? How can we get better? How can we live our values every single day and in every way? So this idea that the brand is something that's consummated in an advertising agency and worked up in a marketing room and then put out by PR people, yeah, I think we've all seen Mad Men. Okay, yeah, that's not today. Your brand is when consumers interact with you. Every single small exchange. Like my grandfather taught me to believe that you could learn from every exchange. If you're in an elevator and you're going up to the 30th floor, if you're aware and you're present and you're thinking about it, you can learn something from that experience. So every experience that you have with your customers, from the front line to the receptionist to the call center, those are all brand experiences. That's your brand. All the stuff that we try to sell, as our brand, yeah, not so much. It's those exchanges where they either believe you and trust you because you fulfilled on a brand promise, or you didn't. You lied to them. And you told them of one thing, and then they got there and experienced you and found something other. You are who you are. Own it. Make it better. And again, not an end goal. This is a process. And it's not easy. And I fully understand that it's not easy. The last two things I want to put in front of you before we get to Q&A. What if we actually started with, instead of talking about the recruitment process and what we need to do to manage the outbound communications, make people fall in love with us on the front end, what if we did that? And the back end. So, 50 employees are going to leave our company next month in July. We know that. Some of that will be both voluntary and some will be involuntary, but that's going to happen. What are we doing to manage our employer brand there? How do we do that? And not just do it better, but do it in a way that's congruent with our values and our culture. How do we do that and, make them love us? Find a way to get them to love us when they leave or as they leave. I was listening to NPR the other day, and I can't remember the author's name, and I'll find it for you if you're interested. But she was talking about divorce. She's an expert on divorce. I've never been through a divorce. My parents they've still married. So I don't know anything about divorce. I'll start there. But the woman speaking was an expert on divorce, and she said, okay, here's the game. You have to separate divorce from parenting. If you have kids, you and your partner, for whatever reason, doesn't matter, you've decided to part ways. Fair enough. But the parenting has to be separate than the divorce. How you parent that lives on forever. In most marriages, one parent talks badly about the other parent talks badly, and they use their kids back and forth as tennis balls to talk badly about them. What she was saying, and I think it's the hardest thing in the world to do, is you actually have to love your partner more after you get divorced than you did when you were married. Wow. Are you kidding me? I like stopped the car. Like, what? My brain hurts. How do you do that? How do you love the person more after you've gotten divorced? And that's the trick to parenting. That's how you create high-functioning kids, is you can separate, and you don't make them pawns in that game. So what if we actually started with when people leave? What do we do, and how is that a part of our employer brand? I've written about the second bullet point before, what if we cared about people? You know, we care deeply about people when we're recruiting them. I mean, woo, yes, we care deeply. But what if we actually cared, really, truly cared about them, and that procession and the treatment and the feelings and the emotions? What if we really thought about that and was articulate in both what we wanted to do and achieved with every single person that left our firm? What does that look like? What does that world look like? And I don't think any of these things are easy. And without any further ado, I think we've got 10-ish minutes left. Let's do some Q&A.
Yeah, sounds great, William. Wow, that was fantastic. You always make us think and change the angle of the prism that we look at things like employer brand and alumni. So thank you for definitely giving us a lot to think about in the coming hours for sure. But we do have some questions folks have typed in while you were speaking. The first one, you mentioned something about tactics being easy. And the question is, we have limited resources for culture marketing, time specifically. My team has to focus on only 1 or 2 channels to monitor my brand. What would they say are the most important? What would you say are the most important?
Oh, that's great. What a great question. First of all, we're looking at it as a zero-sum game. And we need to change that, because the person asking the question is spot on. If you're dealing with a budget that's finite, you're never going to be able to get it all done. What we've got to do is escalate this, and we've got to move it up and prioritize. Like whenever someone says that they don't have time for you, you know, like, oh, I'm super busy and I just don't have time, what they're really saying is you didn't make the priority list. I have a priority list, and you didn't make it. That's what they're saying when they say that to you. When we think that we have a finite budget, we're the ones that we need to rethink that, and we need to reprioritize that for leadership. For the board, for leadership, for everybody involved, we need to get more budget. Because to get the tactics that I think are easier done, you've got to have money. You've got to make it a high priority, which means that you've got to have executive buy-in. You've got to have them see, hey, here's Glassdoor. Here's what everyone's saying about this. By the way, we just think of this as just kind of a negative Nancy. Okay, yeah, that's about 5 years ago. Candidates, we can't recruit the engineers you want us to recruit because of this. And we have to get active, and we need more money. And so we need to fight for more budget. As the simple answer is, we need to put this on the priority list where it isn't a zero-sum game. It isn't a finite budget. We need more money to fund all of these initiatives. Spot on question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We had one other question. You mentioned that you wrote about the last question in your slide. The question is, do you have an article that goes into more depth on that topic that you can share?
No, I try not to ever go into depth. So no, it was, you know, I play at the poking at the status quo, but I don't really get into, or nor do I care emotionally or intellectually about going much deeper than that. The article is on Fistful of Talent. And I can forward it. If you tweet out to me, I'll forward you the article. And it was really just getting people to think differently. All I want when I interact with people, which is both difficult and easy, is I want them to tilt their head to the right and think of things a little bit differently. And so the article does not go deeper, does not give you a list, doesn't give you a checklist, doesn't do those things, because I just don't, I'm not that guy.
Yeah. Well, one other question. It was interesting you made that reference to a tattoo, but undoubtedly whether we have a tattoo or not, we definitely have lifelong connections with the companies that we worked with, right? We associate with them and so forth. But the one question that came in is, do you have to stay in touch with your employees and continue to make efforts to interact with them after they've moved on if they aren't explicitly reaching out to you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, yeah. Think of the alumni network. If we go back to the school metaphor, they're constantly, I mean, UAB, University of Arizona, Case, I get mail from them every week. They're trying to make my life better. They're trying to add value. They're trying to get me more involved in what they're doing with both current students, but also continuing education. So should we be aggressive and having a relationship with former employees? Absolutely. And there's a lot of things that we can do there, but if you start with, we need to make their life better, like that divorce metaphor of we need to love them more after they leave. I mean, I understand how difficult that idea is. But if we think about it, we say, you know what, we need to be more aggressive over here about making their life better. And maybe some of these people will boomerang and come back to us. I know a guy that's worked for Deloitte 4 different times. Because Deloitte has such a fantastic alumni network. He's gone out, done a bit, come back, gone out, done another bit, come back. You know, that's a great story. And so how do you do that? You got to get active.
Yeah, yeah. And this next question is somewhat related, but just wanted to acknowledge the question that came in is, what do you do about employees who really love the company and they're upset because they have to leave the company they love? How do you keep them engaged positively with the brand while respecting their feelings?
Well, I think you have to acknowledge the feelings. You know, you have to acknowledge that it happened. Like, we've let you down. And there's no way to not say that. We've let you down because we loved you. You fell in love with us, and for other reasons, either known or unknown, we have to part ways. We still love you, and we understand you're going to go through a phase where you don't like us, you don't respect us, you don't think highly of us. We understand grief, and we get it, but we want to be a part of your life forever. Mm-hmm. And that's an aspirational goal, but we should, I mean, it's grief, you know, we've all gone through hard times, right? So it's grief management.
Yeah, yeah. And back to your metaphor, I think sometimes in relationships, after relationships break up, friendships are even stronger sometimes than when you're in a marriage than when you're outside marriage in some cases. Yeah,
I've seen that. I have 2 friends that they should have never married. but they married and they had 3 kids, and they're better now. Like, they talk every single day now, but they were horrible together as a married couple. Just horrible. And they're great to their kids, and it's you're right. That can happen. But they chose, you know, they made choices along the way to not disparage the other person and to actively communicate and be on the same page so your kids can use you against the other one, et cetera. And so those are all choices.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I knew this was going to be very engaging and we would go the full hour, but it looks like we have come up to the top of the hour. So I wanted to thank everybody who joined and definitely like to encourage everybody to continue the conversation. So feel free to use hashtag SmartTalkHR, or you can send us an email as well to hello@rismart.com, and we'll talk with William offline and get back to you. Thank you again, William, so much for your time, and thank all of you for joining us today. And this concludes the event. Thank you all. Take care.